Welcome to Radio Ulster's consumer programme on your behalf. I'm Linda McAuley, and this morning, if it's expert opinion you need, well, you've come to the right place, because with me, Brian Speers, spokesperson for the Law Society, we'll be talking about ground rents, and really it's going to be a lot more exciting than it sounds, because it is things that can happen to the best of us and what to do about it. And of course, you can call or comment or ask a question. 030 30 80 55 55. Standard geographic charges from landlines and mobiles, or if you text me, 81771. Let's go to an interesting subject, one that enthralls so many of our listeners. How much is your ground rent? And once that amount is set, can it go up? This listener, Scottish, he'd never heard of ground rent before, but when he came to Northern Ireland, bought a house, he discovered he had to pay a company a small amount every year. And his solicitor assured him it couldn't go up. It wouldn't go up. In fact, he has it in writing. So he was amazed when the amount doubled.
This house, as far as I know, was built in 1997. There's only been one occupant before us. And when we got the papers through from the solicitor, we just said, well, here's the ground rent. And we just at that time accepted it was something similar to the rates. You paid it every year. We would get a letter in twice a year saying you have to pay £50 next month, which we did. And then it changed over to the technology. You could do it through the bank, online and one thing and another.
Well, from your accent, people will know you're not originally from these parts. So is ground rent, is that something you're familiar with in Scotland?
No. I think we call it few duty over there, FEU. I think it's an old name. And the house we were in, we didn't pay any few duty. Some, I believe, do, but in our house we didn't have anything like that. It was just they paid their rates, mortgage and stuff like that. So this was all new to us, but it didn't make any difference to us. We just accepted it as something the same as rates. So we just paid it twice a year when we were asked.
But you weren't expecting it to change. I mean, it says here on this paperwork that you have, let me see, it's called your lease, and you've got here circled the first schedule, term of lease 1,000 years from the date hereof, and then your yearly rent £100 during the first 10 years of the said term, and the yearly rent of £200 during the residue of the said term, such rent to accrue from the first day of June 1997. So have you been paying £100 a year for all this time?
Oh, since we came in the house, yes. It's been £50 twice a year.
You felt you were assured, you were comfortable that this was going to be a fixed amount?
We did. We thought that the £100 would just be carry on as it was.
Although it does say here that after so many years, after 10 years, it would go up. Were you not aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of it going up. Even at that, I just accepted when I seen it. But we've also got another piece of paper that says it would stay at £100, there'd be no increase.
And that bit of paper came from the solicitor who did the actual transactions at the time. And on that bit of paper, it says the property's owned under a 1,000-year lease subject to an annual rent of £100, which you knew, the usual form of ownership in Northern Ireland. And it talks about it actually says here in black and white, the lease runs from the 10th of April 1997, and the £100 rent can never increase.
Yeah. See, that's the one we got from our solicitor. That's the one we read. I mean, the one before that came from the previous tenants' solicitors. And I think they just, as a matter of courtesy, they gave us a copy of it. But we never actually read it. We read the one from our own solicitor, as it says there, it will never increase.
So how much are you being asked to pay now?
At the moment, we're still paying £100 a year, but apparently there's something going to come out this year when they change it, and we'll have up to 2019 to pay it without incurring any charge.
Were you ever told when you were buying the house that you could actually buy out the ground rent?
At the beginning, we got an opportunity, and we phoned the solicitor to see what does this mean. And the solicitor said it makes no difference in Northern Ireland to the value of a house, whether you've bought your ground rent or not. But I believe now you can't buy it. One of the other tenants in this area tried to buy it. He moved in about 18 months ago, and wanted to buy a ground rent, and he was told he couldn't.
And have you been back to your solicitor to ask them why their letter says it will never go up when the actual lease, the title deed, says it will go up after 10 years?
Well, I asked them what all this meant, and they said that the ground rent as such has got nothing to do with them. It's outside their remit.
Well, who has it got something to do with? Brian Speers, spokesman for the Law Society. Ground rent. Some of them are very small, some are bigger, but I didn't know they could increase. And this gentleman was told his couldn't by his solicitor. And yet you've seen this lease here that says £100 rent can never increase. So what went wrong there?
Good morning, Linda. Yes, ground rents have been with us in Northern Ireland and throughout the island of Ireland for a very considerable period of time. Many people will experience them, but in fact, since legislation around the turn of the millennium, there is no capacity to create ground rents or create what are called long leases anymore.
So they're historical.
They are historical, but he is in 1997, so his circumstances, of course, were pre the legislation, and I suspect that the developer knew that the legislation was on the cards and wanted then to maximise their opportunity for...
And that was legal?
And that was legal, yes.
What was wrong, though, I'm assuming, is that the solicitor told him that it could not increase. Now, if he was told that by his solicitor, does he have a case to take his solicitor to court, or can he go to the Law Society about that?
Well, one has to tread carefully, but certainly the document makes it clear that the ground rent was intended to increase after 10 years. That is a lawful thing to have included. Indeed,
But the solicitor's letter says the opposite.
And that's something. So the loss to this particular Scottish friend would be the fact that if he had known that, would he have bought?
Well, he was misled by a solicitor. I mean, solicitors don't always get things right, let's be truthful. So if something goes wrong, can you go to the Law Society, or what is your redress?
Well, you have redress against the solicitor, and that is something that he should contemplate, because clearly the advice on the papers that have been produced so far does not appear to be correct.
So should he go to the Law Society? Is that something the Law Society can help
He
with?
goes to the Law Society if the Law Society, if he has a complaint about what his solicitor has said, and this is perhaps on the borderline between a complaint or has the solicitor given incorrect or negligent advice.
But certainly it's an area he could pursue. But the actual ground rent itself, now you say since 2000 they don't exist anymore, but you can buy them out, and we hear this all the time. You've even told me in the programme before you can do it. Norman in Bangor asks a very relevant question. He says, I pay ground rent every year and it doesn't rise, so what's the point of buying it out when it never goes up?
Well, I think it's an economic assessment. Would you prefer to pay the multiplier, which is 9 times the rent? Although, just to support the notion that ground rents can go up, there are some complicated calculations included within the ground rent redemption legislation to enable you to work out what you have to pay if your ground rent, highly unusually, has a provision whereby it can increase. So why you would buy it out is you don't want the hassle and bother of having to pay a relatively small amount every year. £100, incidentally, is again unusual, because many ground rents are nothing like that amount each year.
And if you want to buy it out, the person who owns it, can they say no? Or if you say I want to, do they have to?
No, this is a statutory scheme providing for the redemption of ground rents. There's lots of information readily available, and you can fill out the form, pay a small fee, and the ground rent then is the 9 times is deposited with the land registry, and they then make that available to the ground landowner if the ground landowner is available. That's then the end of ground rent.
All kinds of questions about this ground rent and freehold. And if you buy out your ground rent, are you then freehold after that?
Yes. Which I could
Is
just
that
stop. I could just stop there, but there's more, perhaps of more interest. Yes, you do get your title promoted to a freehold. However, the covenants in your title, that's the restrictions as to whether you can build more than one house or trade a business from it, those restrictions or restrictive covenants will still continue to apply even though you have redeemed your ground rent. And the process for redemption is fairly accessible. It's not necessarily complicated, and many people do it under their own steam, apart from the fact that because your title is promoted to that of a freehold title, you may want to register that, and that registration process after you've obtained a certificate of redemption of your ground rent probably would require some assistance from a solicitor.
But buying out the ground rent you can do on your own?
Yes.
And it's is it 9 times? Somebody here is saying 10 times. It's 9, is it?
No, it's 9 times according to the ground rent multiplier order, believe it or not. of 2002. It has been set at 9 times.
Okay, and just two little questions just before we finish. Look, it's about ground rent again. People are saying, for example, I've never really paid it for the last 30 years. When I die and my house is sold, will it be deducted? I mean, if you don't pay, can you sell your house? And also, here, my ground rent's 5 peppercorns. Would it benefit me if we bought it out?
Well, that's all to do with consideration for the granting of the lease originally. Remember, leases can no longer be created except in apartments and co-ownership situations. The answer is normally solicitors would agree to an indemnity period of 6 years of historical arrears of ground rent, and the Law Society has a guideline to say don't pursue it if the amount is below £20.
Can you sell your house if it's not paid up?
Of course, yes.
Yes, okay. So many answers. You're a mine of information, Brian. We can ask you and come in and answer one question and you answer so many. That's all we have time for. We've squeezed quite a lot in. If you want to get in touch, email oyb@bbc.co.uk. Enjoy the problems tonight. Till next Saturday, same time. From Mark McCleary, producer, Emma Arbuckle and me, Linda McAuley. Take care. Goodbye.